are really privileged to be here at the British Film Institute with an amazing closing film, The Beatles and India. We are indeed also privileged to have the filmmakers here for Q&A and to share their interesting anecdotes of making this historic film. It has been a challenge for us to curate hybrid festival, screening films online and in cinema across UK. We will be celebrating our festival awards later this afternoon. On behalf of TOF directors, I would like to mention two films that ignited important issues, which is very dear to UCAF ethos. Suchita Bhatia's Khappe for Education, Aditya Kirplani's Not Today on mental health and suicide, and we would like a special commendation for these two films. They were amazing. I'd like to thank, of course, BFI, the Arts Council, for their support. My thanks also goes to sponsors, Sunrise Radio, Dace Plates, Blue Orchid Hotel, Integrity International Trust. To all our filmmakers who shared their film with us, my thanks also goes to dedicated volunteers, staff, and venues for making sure audience have an enjoyable experience in watching the films in safe environment. This year has been difficult, especially the situation in India. UCAF has reached out to British Asian Trust in partnership to support their Oxygen for India emergency appeal. We sincerely hope and look forward to our next festival in 2022 and hope it'll be COVID-free restrictions. May I request everybody to keep their masks on for this event. Now I would like to invite Anuj Radia and Suzi Mann, my dear friend Suzi Mann, onto the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much to David and Pushpinder, and I think she was struggling to recognise me because I had my mask on. We'll go with that. So good afternoon, everyone. It's absolutely wonderful to have an audience finally, and Anuj and I are equally delighted to be back on stage. So we'd like to extend a warm welcome to each and every single one of you to the 23rd UK Asian Film Festival's closing gala here at the British Film Institute. Now, we've all faced arguably the toughest year of our lives. We have witnessed extremely challenging and deeply saddening times. So it's only right that we take this opportunity to reflect and to remember some legends, some greats in the arts and entertainment industry.
Absolutely, thank you so much for that, Suzi. Now, as we know, the pandemic has changed everything, from the way we live to the way we operate as people. Nothing will remain the same. It's been a time of grief, pain, and loss. Sadly, during this global crisis, we've lost several of our industry friends and colleagues. These are artists and storytellers who have spread so much joy, love, and meaning through their craft. The 23rd UK Asian Film Festival would like to pay a heartfelt tribute to some of those who are no longer with us. The first Indian to win an Oscar, costume designer Bhanu Athaya. Critically acclaimed actor Asif Basra. Retired Indian Army Major who went on to become a television, film, and web series actor Bikramjit Kavarpal. Celebrated filmmaker and screenwriter Basu Chatterjee. Known for playing the titular actor in Satyajit Ray's The World of Apu in 1959, actor Soumitra Chatterjee. Wajid Khan from the super hit Bollywood composer duo of Sajid Wajid. Another legendary composer, Shravan Rathore of Bollywood composer duo Nadeem Shravan. Veteran actor Shashikala with a career spanning over 6 decades. Another veteran actor with an iconic role in the film Sholay, Yoodlee. The beloved choreographer, Saroj Khan. The filmmaker who made his mark in mainstream cinema, Mr. Nishikant Kamble. The youngest of the Kapoor brothers, Rajiv Kapoor. And another really, really great loss for the Kapoor family and for us is Mr. Rishi Kapoor, who was fondly known as Chintu. He was a rare Bollywood legend who got better with age. Now, some actors give you a part of their soul, and one such actor was Mr. Irfan Khan. He broke boundaries, worked across industries, and brought searing empathy to each and every project. He's dearly missed today. And last but not the least, we have Sushant Singh Rajput, a thriving talent whose life was sadly cut short and a loss that we're still reeling from today. The 14th of June marks his first death anniversary. Losing our colleagues from the industry has been a very, very difficult time, but their legacies remain iconic and will forever remain in our hearts and thoughts. A longer tribute will be available on the UK Asian Film Festival's YouTube channel.
Thank you ever so much for that, Anuj. Now, on a lighter note, it's time to reflect on this year's UK Asian Film Festival. We've been lucky enough to enjoy 11 days of at-venue and virtual screenings and events, UK and world premieres of some incredible films. We're extremely excited to be part of the UK City of Culture programme in Coventry this year, where Tongues on Fire continues to demonstrate that fantastic films can have audiences nationally if there is enough support to reach and engage with communities who are often easy to ignore. Due to the current pandemic situation and not being able to travel to this year's festival, we've sorely missed many of the filmmakers and artists featured in this year's programme. However, we have felt their presence through their films and recorded Q&As. And we thank them for their support from overseas. And it's also, once again, so wonderful to see so many of you who are able to join us this afternoon. Now, I hope you got to catch a lot of the films, in particular our opening film, Raahgir, directed by the acclaimed Goutam Ghosh, and starring celebrated actors Adil Hussain, Dilotama Shom, and Neeraj Gabi, produced by Amit Agarwal and Adarsh Telemedia. The film is an intimate tale of humanity and kindness that we gravely need during these times of crisis. We also had the sold-out screening of Zindagi Tamasha by director Sarmad Kusa at Genesis Cinema. This was actually due to be part of the UK Asian Film Festival's 2020 programme. It was much awaited highlight telling the story of how society condemns those that refuse to fall in line and dare to express themselves freely. Whilst causing controversy in Pakistan and being banned there, it went on to grab an Oscar nomination. It seems fitting that this year's theme was Ray of Hope. Hope is something we've all wished for. Hope for positivity, for safety, for family, for friends, for those in need, and hope for better times ahead. Hope is the one thing that's kept us united worldwide. And this year's curated films from all over the world demonstrated a ray of hope woven into stories of mental health, equality, sexuality, empathy, and the common person. This year also marked the 100-year centenary of arguably the greatest director of world cinema, a brilliant writer, the critically acclaimed and celebrated filmmaker, Satyajit Ray. He's considered a cultural icon in India and worldwide. Several filmmakers have been influenced by his works, including Gautam Ghosh, who directed our festival's opening film, Raahgir. At the 64th Academy Awards in 1991, Ray received an honorary award for his film, Patra Panjali. His films showcase themes that are universally relatable: parent-child relationships, marriage, loss, reconciliation, and hope. He was considered as being ahead of his time, with women being the central and leading protagonists in his stories. We paid homage to Satyajit Ray throughout our programme, including our new array of talented filmmakers who produced digital commissions inspired by his works and based on the themes depicted in his films, documentaries and features. We also had a special screening of Professor Shonku O. El Dorado, based on Ray's comic book writings and brought to life in film by his son, Sandeep Ray. So the awards this year are to honour the contributions that reflect that theme and the amazing talent that joins the festival family every year. So, shall we begin, Anuj?
Yes, I was born ready, Susie.
So it is wonderful that we're here to celebrate achievements. However, we have to adhere to obviously the government guidelines and the venue social distancing guidelines. So for this year's award segment is a little bit different. Myself and Anuj will be announcing the winners, but unfortunately we cannot invite you up on stage to hand over the gongs. So please remain behind at the end of the gala, where we will escort you to the green room and present you with your award. And for those winners that are present here today, we'd love to show our appreciation and be part of your success. Therefore, if you could stand up when requested so that we can applaud you, but please ensure that you remain at your seats when standing. Although, don't quote me on this, but I think a victory dance on the spot, maybe? Right then, the 23rd UK Asian Film Festival Tongues on Fire Flame Awards. First up, we have certificates awarded to the Ray of Hope Digital Commission winners, and they are, in no particular order, Robbie Keller, Mahendra Soria. There's no pauses. Nimrita Kaur, Anusha Qureshi, Sue Carpenter, Cheyenne Ali, Shai Hussain, Riyali Mukherjee, and Umisha Bhatia. So for the Digital Commission winners that hold us today, if you could please stand so we can try and see you. Yeah, there we are. Congratulations indeed. And now for our award segment. I feel like we need some kind of fanfare and some drum roll. Maybe my nails might come in handy. Right, the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Curated Choice goes to Toofan Male.
The Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Making Waves Digitally goes to one of my favourite films actually from this year, The Great Indian Kitchen.
The Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Making Waves Diversity is awarded to Granada Nights. And if you could stand, there you go.
Okay, and the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Script goes to Manny.
The Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Music goes to the Beatles and India.
Okay, and the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Production goes to none other than Yoodlee Films for Chote.
The Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Director goes to Goutam Ghosh for Raahgir.
And the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Rising Star goes to the very talented Svar Kamble from the film Chote.
Next up we have the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Actor. And this one goes to Telotama Shom for Raahgir.
Terrific in that movie. And now, the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Short Film goes to Last Night in Vegas.
I won't crack a silly joke that I did earlier. I didn't know you were in Vegas.
I was actually in Hogwarts, but that's okay.
The Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Documentary goes to I Am Belle Meyer. Come on, Singh.
edging towards the most awaited sort of awards. So,
the last two.
Yeah, the last two. So the Tongues on Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Film Audience Choice. Any guesses, Suzi?
I think Iconic springs to mind.
Okay, well, speaking of legendary, it goes to the Beatles and India.
Bit of a double whammy, a good opportunity to stretch your legs as well, guys. Right, we're down to the final one, the Tongues of Fire Flame Award 2021 for Best Film. I think that we can all relate to the title of this film. It's been one of those years, and the award goes to the Best Film, Zindagi Tamasha. So once again, huge congratulations to all the winners. Well done. And now next up, we have a very special treat for you, those of you that are familiar with our closing gala. I know it is a little bit different this year, so we've come prepared with some goodies, and we're going to treat you to the world premiere of UK Asian Film Festival's Audience Choice award-winning film, The Beatles and India, after which Anuj Radia will be, of course, hosting an in-conversation with producer Renaud De Silva and co-director Peter Compton. So all that's remaining for us to say is kick back, relax, enjoy the movie, and please keep your masks on. Thank you for being a fabulous audience.
I think my first question that I would like to ask you both, actually, given the fact that I've heard, I've noticed there was a lot of original music used in the film as well. I heard India, India by Nikhil D'Souza, which was fabulous as well. I realised there was no music by the Beatles. Why was that the case?
That's correct, Reynolds.
Publishing. Well, for a start, it's not a music doc. It's a story. So we did. I mean, won't have Beatles music in there, but it was just it would cost a lot of money, so it didn't make sense. But you know, I don't think people. As I said, it's not a music doc. It's a story. So that's a simple answer.
Right. Yeah.
But the music was by Benji Merrison, who did the score. But there's also other music as well by various other people.
Absolutely. Now, I think I wanted to just, I guess, get to know more about yourselves and your personal equation with the Beatles. How much of the Beatles fan are you, and what influence has their music had on your lives? Would you like to?
Yeah, sure. I was a child in the 60s, and obviously there was a massive influence on me. I'm going to refer to Ren again, because Ren is one of the great Beatles fans, and that's underlined by the fact he actually owns a Beatles property in London.
So when he said his child in the 60s, he meant the 1960s, not the 1860s. Well, yeah, no, I turned into the Beatles when I was probably about 8, 9 years old. And I knew I wanted to be in the music business. So we aren't filmmakers, we come from the music industry. And it was from the age of probably 10 that I knew I wanted to be in the business. And yeah, I mean, the Beatles are responsible for me being in the music business in a way, much to the sort of disappointment of my parents. I didn't do the normal Indian route and become a doctor or an engineer, go to university.
That is so relatable, by the way. I just got to say.
So yeah, I'm a fan of the Beatles. Pete's more, apart from being a fan, he's an expert as well in the Beatles. So he's very underestimated.
So, but Reynolds has Ringo's flat that he lived in. Jimi Hendrix lived there, and John Lennon. So wow, that's pretty good.
That is pretty much a monument, to be very
honest.
Yes,
yeah, sort of. It's blue plaque as well. You have a blue plaque in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, and it has an India connection in terms that John lived there just after he came back from India in August '68. Wow. So not long after.
I think we need to see another spin-off, I think, to this film. There's so much more I would love to know about that, actually, I think in more detail. But I'm glad you mentioned as well about the whole aspect about your background as well, because like you mentioned, you're mostly based in music. But I think as filmmakers, I find it very fascinating whenever I watch or do interviews regarding documentaries, because I feel like it's very difficult to have a very clear narrative, like, journey in the film, especially given the fact that you've gone through hours of archives, you've gone through hours of speaking with people who we've never actually knew about much before, especially in India as well. And I think that was really, really fascinating. So how difficult is it for you as storytellers, as filmmakers, perhaps Pete, you could take this one,
yeah, sure,
to keep a clear narrative within a documentary?
Yeah, someone that needs to take great credit for this film is our editor, Ben Nugent, who's here this afternoon. He was key with the director of the film, Ajoy, Bose, who wrote the original book it's based on, unfortunately unable to travel. Yeah. And they created the story. But what makes it, of course, is that the people in India we interviewed, eyewitness accounts, people actually in the ashram, and most of them had never been interviewed before. And it's great when you interview someone like Saeed Naqvi, who's a very established journalist in India. Mm. He can talk about being in the ashram, and then you see him. He's behind the Maharishi and the archive footage all the time. He's like standing behind him. So it backs his story up. Lots of people will say, "Oh yeah, I met the Beatles now." He's got it. It's defined completely. So it's. I think the story came together from that. It really is 3 acts: how it happened, then it happened, and then the post story. And that's only a small segment of the Beatles' career. Mm. The Beatles are almost biblical in terms of size. All the things they did. It's just an incredible story.
Yeah, and I guess it must be very hard of where to begin as well from, right? Because I guess it must have been so difficult because, like you said, they've had such a huge life story. I mean, I think even a series is probably not enough. You probably have to have like 5 series for that. So I guess even for you to find that beginning itself must have been quite a
yes, it's difficult, and it's also difficult with archive footage. You have to comb archives everywhere to find them. Obviously, you can't use Beatles. Beatles their own photos and things like that, we can't use those. So we have to find interviews, everything. We found some interview, the interview, the All India Radio interview, they've been buried all that time and have been discovered. And there's a John Lennon interview as well that was owned by the Hard Rock Cafe, which we used in the film. They bought it at auction and then stuck it in their vaults, and it kind of disappeared completely. And they were very surprised when I contacted them. No one there really knew much about it, so they were pleased to give it to the film, so a wider audience can hear it. Well,
thanks to you, hidden gems were discovered, and I think you were a medium, and thanks to you because we got that, and I think that was absolutely wonderful to hear that. In fact, I absolutely love the film's visual appeal. In fact, whenever we saw the news clips or the archives, it transported us back to the 60s. I mean, I felt like I was there at the time of the 60s. And it really did have a visual feel. I think even a special mention I'd like to give, especially that LSD segment where you had the clips overlapping. I think that was very beguiling. I was like, wow. It was pretty cinematically appealing. So I think, again, what drives your vision as a storyteller, again, when it comes to making a factual piece, especially selecting the particular clips and the particular, maybe anecdotes as well?
Yeah, I can give it, anecdotal. We shot a lot of interviews in India, a lot of which we couldn't use. There's not enough room to fit them in the film.
Right.
One of my favourite ones which we couldn't use was with a gentleman called Caliph Mithia, whose grandfather lived in Union Park, and he would see George Harrison coming out of a very nondescript hotel and heading to Ravi Shankar's house on Pali Hill for lessons. And at that time, Harrison had quit being at the Taj because there was so much Beatle interest. And this grandfather saw him one day, stopped him and said, would you like to come to tea at my house? And Harrison agreed, said, I'll come this afternoon. And Harrison duly arrived that afternoon. And had tea with an Indian family, a domestic Indian tea party, as you call it. But the great twist is that he started turning up unannounced then. He would just knock at the door and ask if he could come in and have tea. So, great story, and he bequeathed that they gave them a guitar, which is still in the family. It's on, I think it's kept in a restaurant. So, wasn't it? Yeah, a restaurant, yeah.
Yeah, in a little cafe.
Yeah. So it's just such a great, great story. And as it's mentioned in the film, when the gentleman plays Within You, Without You, and George smiles at him. It's a wonderful moment. So
we've got a lot of stories that to think of having a follow-up actually, because there's stories that didn't fit in, So I just want to echo what Pete said about Ben Nugent, our editor. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be up here because he really shaped the story. And also Andrew Neil, our researcher as well. He kind of uncovered a lot of the gems that you see. So coming back to the music, we actually have an album of 20 Beatles songs by Indian artists, and these songs are the songs they either composed in India or have an Indian connection. So Norwegian Wood was the first time they had sitar in it. So Benny Dial is one of them, Monica Dobro you saw. So that album's going to be coming out in a few months' time. So I forgot to mention that.
Oh wow, no, that is very, I think that would be wonderful to hear as well. And I think let's just, as you mentioned about the tea party, I think nothing ever beats a cup of chai. I think we all definitely need a cup of chai often as possible, so I can completely resonate with that. But I think talking about the album that you said, and I think just using that as a segue to my next question, throughout the making of the documentary, I mean, what did you discover the most about the Beatles' popularity in Indian society and pop culture, which might be something which maybe you were not aware about before making it, but then maybe you were very surprised after actually making it? Or what's something that you discovered the most?
Yeah, it's there were quite a few things actually. For instance, the Beatles appealed to kind of the English-speaking middle class in India. So it was kind of a niche market. It wasn't the masses, but to those people it meant a lot. But I think what I learned from that is that their trip to India and the media buzz that it created, I think they're partly responsible for the kind of the globalization of Indian culture. Eventually, you know, because India at that time in the 60s were, you know, were kind of recovering from the colonial past. There was wars with Pakistan and all these things were going on. So I just felt that the certain things I kind of overlooked that kind of manifested itself as we were uncovering more and more information, you know. But that's one thing that I took away, is that the impact that they had on Indian society as well. And of course, you know, with Bollywood having that Shami Kapoor film is a classic example. Yeah. I think also the newspapers, you know, in India were very, very heavily political. There were only political stories in it. But from then onwards, I think they started incorporating a lot of the arts into, you know, the newspapers, or the English newspapers I'm talking about. Right. I think from then onwards, because it was an Indian story, really. It was a world story, but it originated from India.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what the documentary does. It celebrates these two cultures coming together. You know, we're talking about crossover, and I think it's very relevant even now, especially because we've got a lot of Indian and South Asian artists who are, you know, transitioning over into Hollywood. Like you've got Priyanka Chopra Jonas and so many other actors who are sort of foraying onto that. I mean, she's an actor as well and a singer too. So I think in that note, it does seem very relevant as well and befitting to today's day and age. But I think also I wanted to kind of go back a bit more, especially back to the 60s, when the craze of the Beatles was really, really huge. I mean, the band traveling to India to pursue a life of spirituality, it must have caused quite a stir, I imagine, because obviously the UK that we are, the Britain that we're in here today is obviously far more different than what it was back then. So, as followers of the Beatles, what did you feel about their decision to go to India back then, and how do you feel now about it, having obviously gone through that journey of making the documentary?
Right, okay, well I was 13 at the time. And I remember coverage was pretty limited because it was like a closed world, so there was very little you could see about it, etc. So the British attitude probably, you know, what are they getting up to now? I think Maharishi and Yoko Ono were seen as very strange people in 1968. I think in contemporary Britain today, I think that they would just be part of society. Definitely, there's no, there's no better distinction today. I think sometimes in the newsreel, the British newsreel of '68 when they arrived in India, they're still being treated like Beatlemania from 4 years ago. They actually says in the newsreel, the commentary says they are Maharishi's top of the pop pupils, which is a very weird phrase, you know, for that era, definitely. But yeah, so media coverage was pretty low. A lot of that footage that in the film is from Reuters, and they had someone there. Right. But there's very little, you know, BBC coverage is pretty limited. ITN, which you see in the film, was done in the year before because they cancelled going there in '67. So there's not a lot around.
I think it's worth saying that at that time, in 1968, you know, the Beatles were so big. You know, even the journalists, the international journalists who were covering stories, you know, they asked their editors where should they go next, because of course Vietnam was a massive offensive over there. There's a Prague Spring as well in January 1968, and the editors said no, go to Rishikesh. That's the next big story. So that just gives you a perspective of how big a world story that was. You know, so that had global kind of impact, I think.
Well, speaking of impact, I think sadly we've reached towards the end. I had so many more questions, but as they say, time is always gone.
Sorry, guys, one epilogue. Unfortunately, two of the people in the film died in the last few weeks.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
The helicopter pilot, Ruston Captain, and the Dehradun music store owner, Ajoy Singh. So they sadly passed away. I'm so glad we got to get their story. Because they would have been lost for posterity. Everyone wanted to know what was said in the helicopter, and now we know.
Yeah, I think just for that, I think that deserves. On that note, Renaud and Pete, thank you so much for joining us here at the British Film Institute and giving us the world premiere of the Beatles and India.